I stood in my empty dining room on Thanksgiving morning staring at a turkey I'd basted 3 times for 15 people who never showed. That was the moment I finally understood that 10 years of begging my own kids for a crumb of attention had broken something in me that wasn't ever going to heal right. 4 months later, I walked away from everything, the house, the money, the whole life I'd built, and I never looked back. What none of them knew was that I wasn't just some sweet old widow they could keep putting off. I was the one holding every single card. My name is Peggy Coleman. I'm 73 years old, and I'm going to tell you what happens when your own family mistakes your kindness for weakness and your silence for surrender. Before I get into it, y'all tell me where you're watching from tonight. Drop your city or state in the comments. I always love knowing who's out there listening. Now let me take you back to where this whole thing started. 40 years ago, I married the love of my life, Walter Coleman, right outside Savannah, Georgia. Walter ran his own insurance agency for 35 years, and I taught third grade 2 miles from our house. We weren't rich, not by a long shot, but we were comfortable, steady people, happy in that quiet way that doesn't need announcing. Every morning, he brought me coffee in bed before I even opened my eyes. Every evening, we sat on the porch with sweet tea shooting the breeze till the fireflies came out. Our house was the gathering place, birthday parties, Sunday suppers, the whole neighborhood in and out of our kitchen like it was their own. Our 3 children, Danielle, Tyler, and Christine, were my entire world. Danielle was the oldest, strong-willed, always had a plan and the sass to back it up. Tyler was our middle boy, quiet, always fixing something with his hands. Christine was the baby, the one everybody babied a little too much, myself included. We paid for every bit of their college, no debt. Helped with every down payment. Babysat those grandbabies every single week. I really believed with my whole heart that we were a close, tight-knit family, the real deal. I'll tell you one thing, though, that I didn't think much of at the time. Walter used to say it half joking, but I noticed he never fully laughed when he said it. Don't let them ever find out what we've really got till we're both good and gone, Peggy. Money changes people faster than grief does. I'd swat his arm and tell him our kids weren't like that. He'd just get this quiet look on his face and go back to his crossword. I think some part of him already knew something I wasn't ready to see yet. Walter and I had a standing Sunday dinner tradition, rotating between whichever kid's family, but somebody was always at our table. That table sat 12 because Walter built it himself. He used to joke our front door had a revolving hinge because somebody was always coming or going. I loved every bit of that chaos. Then came October 9th, 11 years ago, the day everything changed for good. Walter had been feeling off for weeks, tired, some chest tightness he kept waving off as nothing but heartburn. Stubborn man, never once wanted to bother a doctor. Then one morning he collapsed right there in our kitchen, coffee mug still in his hand. Paramedics worked on him nearly 40 minutes. Massive heart attack. He was 67. The funeral was packed, near 300 people, because Walter had quietly helped half that town at one point or another. All 3 of my children stood next to me that day. Danielle held my hand through the whole service and told me, "Mama, we're not going anywhere. We've got you." God help me, I believed every word of it. That first year my kids were good to me, called every day, brought groceries. Danielle stayed with me a full week. Tyler mowed my lawn every Saturday, same as his father used to. Christine called every single morning just to hear my voice, always with something sweet to say, always promising she'd visit soon. I thought, this right here, this is what family does. We hold each other up through the dark. But then, slow as molasses, it started shifting, and each one of my kids pulled away in their own particular way, I'd come to learn. Daily calls turned to every few days, then weekly, then, whenever it happened to cross their minds. I told myself they had their own lives now, their own responsibilities, and I didn't want to be the mother who guilt trips her grown children. So I kept my mouth shut and gave them room while I was quietly drowning in that big empty house all by myself. That first Thanksgiving without Walter, I figured I'd spend it with one of the kids, same as always. Danielle called 2 weeks out, straight to the point like she always was. Mama, we're doing something small this year, just Marcus's family. You understand, right? I swallowed that hurt down whole. Tyler didn't call at all, just a text that showed up the week of, short and vague. Heading upstate this year. Maybe next time. Christine called, sweet as ever, going on about how much she wished she could make it, how much she loved me, how sorry she was before landing on the same outcome as the other two. I promise I'll figure something out for Christmas, Mama. So I spent that first Thanksgiving completely by myself, one plate set at a table built for 12, staring at the empty chair where Walter should have been sitting. Christmas came. Danielle canceled 2 days out, blunt as a hammer, no real explanation offered. Tyler just never confirmed at all, and I stopped waiting on an answer that wasn't coming. Christine called Christmas Eve, voice full of warmth, swearing she'd stop by Christmas morning for even just an hour. She never showed. I sat alone that morning, wrapped presents for grandbabies. Nobody came to collect tree lights, blinking in an empty room. That's when it hit me, this wasn't just a rough patch we'd get through. By year 3, I'd stopped getting invited to my own grandchildren's birthday parties altogether. Found out about them after the fact through Facebook photos, my whole family smiling together without me in a single frame. I drove to Danielle's place unannounced one time, desperate enough to just show up on her doorstep. She answered the door in gym clothes, barely looked at me twice. Mama, I've got a class in 30 minutes. Can this wait? I told her I never saw any of them anymore. She got defensive, real quick, blunt as always. You're being dramatic. Maybe if you weren't so negative all the time, we'd want to visit more. That one cut clean through me, and I actually apologized for wanting to see my own daughter. Year 4, I slipped on wet leaves on my own front steps and broke my wrist. Called Danielle from the ER first. She said she'd swing by later. Never did, never even followed up. Called Tyler next, and it went to voicemail, same as it always did anymore, no callback for 2 full days. I managed alone, one-handed grocery runs, sleeping propped up in a chair. Not one of my 3 grown children came to help their 70-year-old mother with a broken bone. Year 5, my granddaughter, Ashley, got into Emory, my own alma mater. Found out through Facebook. Sent her a card, a check, a whole letter about my time there. One text back. Thanks, Grandma. Nothing more. 10 years. 10 years of holidays, alone calls that never got returned, being erased bit by bit from a family I gave everything to build. I became invisible in my own life. If you've ever poured your whole life into people who barely gave you scraps back, and you're still standing here anyway, I want you to know I see you. And if this story's been sitting right with you so far, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because we're only just getting to the part where everything changes. Here's what finally broke me clean in half. Year 10, Thanksgiving. I knew better by then. I really did. But something in me just couldn't quit hoping. A decade since Walter passed, maybe, just maybe, they were ready to be a family again. So I did something I swore I'd never do. I called all 3, and I begged, not asked, begged. Told them how lonely I was, how much I missed them, how much one single holiday not spent alone would mean to me. Told them I'd cook it all, they just had to show up. Danielle said she'd think on it. Tyler said he'd try. Christine said it sounded nice. I took that as a yes. Spent 3 straight days cooking turkey, cornbread, dressing 3 kinds of pie, every favorite dish they grew up on. Set the table for 15. Bought a new tablecloth, fresh flowers. Wanted it perfect, wanted to remind them what we used to be. I waited. Turkey came out golden at 2 o'clock. 2:30, 3, 4. Called Danielle straight to voicemail. Called Tyler nothing. Christine wasn't picking up either. By 8 that night, I sat alone at that table staring down 15 empty chairs and enough food to feed a family that never came. Not one of them called to say they weren't coming. I sat there till near midnight, and something inside me just died quiet and cold. Not fast like Walter's heart attack. Slow, the death of hope. That night, I made a decision. I was done begging, done waiting around like a fool. Done letting myself be erased from a family I built with my own 2 hands. The Monday after that gutting Thanksgiving, I walked straight into my lawyer's office, no appointment, no waiting around. Ray had been Walter's attorney and friend for 30 years, and I'd never once seen the man look surprised by anything in all that time. Ray, I told him, sliding a folder across his desk, I need you to pull every account, Walter, and I ever opened. All of it. I want the real number. He came back to me 3 days later, called me himself, instead of having his assistant do it, which should have told me something right there. Peggy, he said, and there was a pause in his voice. I'd never heard from him. Before you understand, you're sitting on just north of $4 million between the house, the investments, and the insurance. I sat down hard in my kitchen chair. Here's the thing, my children never knew something, Walter, and I kept quiet on purpose, because we didn't want them treating us like a bank with a pulse. We lived plain on purpose. We wanted our kids learning to build their own way, not leaning on ours their whole lives. What none of them knew either was just how much of that quiet money had already been flowing to them for years, without a single one of them ever asking where it came from. Tyler's daughter's braces he couldn't quite swing, I'd covered through what he thought was some insurance rebate. Christine's husband's little landscaping business that needed capital, I was one of his silent backers, quiet as a church mouse about it. Danielle's mortgage, when she got laid off 2 years back, I paid 3 months of it through a check she assumed came from Walter's old company. Took the help every single time, and never once asked, never had time for a phone call either. Funny how that works. Ray, I said, I need to make some big changes. Over the next 4 months, I dismantled the whole life I'd built in Georgia, sold the family home for $2.1 million to a young couple expecting their first baby. I hoped they'd fill it with more love than it held those last 10 years. Liquidated every investment, closed every joint account, moved it all into my name alone, paid off and closed out the secret help I'd been giving each of my kids. Cut every financial thread tying me to them. Then I called each one last time. Brief, polite, final. It's Mama. I'm selling the house and moving on. Don't know where yet. If there's anything of your daddy's you want, you've got 2 weeks, otherwise it goes to charity. Not one of them came for a single thing. Danielle texted, okay, Mama, good luck. Tyler didn't respond at all. Christine sent a crying emoji. That told me everything I needed. I packed that house myself, 40 years of memories, into boxes, donated most of it, kept only what fit, my car, some clothes, photo albums, Walter's wedding band, one quilt my own mother made. Walter's workshop, where he built cribs for every grandbaby, I gave the whole thing to a trade school. Somebody ought to use those tools. By spring, near 11 years to the day since Walter passed, I was gone. Bought a small condo in Asheville, North Carolina, up in the mountains, a place Walter and I always talked about retiring to but never got around to. Changed my number, no forwarding address, opened fresh accounts, and disappeared clean. First morning waking up in Asheville, coffee on my little balcony, watching the fog roll off the mountains. I didn't check my phone, hoping for a call that wasn't coming. For the first time in 11 years, I felt free. I made real friends, joined a quilting circle, volunteered at the library, took up painting, if you can believe that at 73, traveled some, finally saw Ireland, a place Walter and I always dreamed about. A year passed quiet. Then a letter showed up forwarded through Ray, the only soul who knew my address. From Danielle. Mom, we need to talk, it's urgent. I didn't call. More letters came. Then Ray rang me himself. Peggy, your daughter's been hounding my office asking about Walter's estate, about the house sale. I told her I can't discuss your private business. I asked him plain, what's she really after, Ray? He said it straight. I believe they've finally figured out just how much your husband was worth, and they're realizing you've moved on without them. Turns out my kids had gotten together and decided it was time to look after Mama's finances. Translation, they'd finally done the math on what they stood to inherit. They'd gone by the old house, found strangers living there. Tried the old bank, everything closed. Pieced together there'd been a whole lot more money than they ever imagined, and I'd taken it and vanished into thin air. Tyler showed up at Ray's office demanding answers. Danielle hired somebody to track me down. Christine sent a long email about how worried they all were, how they needed to make sure I wasn't being scammed or making poor choices in my grief. My grief. After 11 years of me grieving alone now, suddenly, they cared. I told Ray to forward my new email. Let's see what they're really after. Messages came flooding, and all three sudden, so loving, so desperate. I sat with those for near a week before answering, wanted to be clear-headed, not emotional. Finally wrote one letter, sent it to all three at once. Told them plain I was safe, healthy, happier than I'd been in a decade. Told them I spent 10 years cooking meals nobody ate, buying gifts nobody collected, making calls nobody returned. Told them I noticed they only came looking once money got involved, that 10 years they couldn't spare a phone call, but the second Daddy's estate came up, suddenly I mattered. Told them the money was mine, I'd spend it, give it, or leave it exactly as I chose. Told them love and money aren't the same currency, and you can't inherit a relationship you never once maintained. Hit send, and felt something lift off my chest I didn't even know I'd been hauling around. Danielle came back angry, how dare I accuse them. Tyler got defensive, said they'd been busy dealing with their own stuff. Christine got manipulative, couldn't believe I'd abandon my own grandbabies like that. Not one of them said the words I was actually waiting on. You're right, we're sorry. Ray fielded the legal noise. They had zero claim. Walter left it all to me, plain and clear, and I'd been sound of mind managing it competently for over a decade. Their lawyers' threats fell apart fast once Ray laid out the documentation. After 6 months, the noise finally died down. They'd given up trying to find me, probably decided I was some bitter old woman who cut them off unfair. And you know, I was all right with that. Let them tell themselves whatever story helps them sleep. I'm 73 now, 18 months since I left Georgia, and I haven't regretted a single day of it, not one. I wake up in my little mountain condo, coffee on the balcony, spend my days exactly how I please, no schedule but my own. I've got dinner with friends who actually show up, rain or shine. I babysit my neighbor's grandbabies because she trusts me, something my own kids never once let me do. I've given a good chunk of Walter's estate to causes we both believed in, literacy programs, the children's hospital back home. Set up trust funds for my own grandchildren, accessible when they turn 25, straight to them, not through their parents' hands, with a letter explaining exactly why grandma wasn't around, so someday they can decide for themselves what kind of family they want to build. Last month, on what would have been Walter's 80th birthday, I got one more email. From Christine this time. Said she'd been in therapy, said her therapist helped her see some things she didn't want to look at before. Said she was sorry, said she finally understood what they'd done to me, asked if we could try rebuilding slow, on my terms, no strings, no rush. I sat with that email along while coffee gone cold beside me. Part of me wanted to just delete it and spare myself another letdown. but a small part of me, the part that'll always be somebody's mother, no matter how bad I've been hurt, wondered if maybe, just maybe, one of my babies had finally grown up enough to see it clear. I haven't answered yet. Might not. Point is that decision's mine now, and mine alone. I still haven't decided what I'm going to do about Christine's letter, if I'm honest with you. But I imagine when I do, I'll tell y'all first before anybody in my own family even hears about it. I'm not desperate anymore. Not waiting by any phone hoping it'll ring. I took back my life, my money, my dignity, and my future, and if they want back into it, they'll earn that the same way anybody else would, through real care, real effort, real respect. No shortcuts, no showing up only when the money's on the table. That's my story, y'all. A decade of being invisible, followed by the choice to disappear on my own 2 feet and build something better. Sometimes the best justice there is simply refusing to keep sitting at a table where nobody bothers showing up for you. I'm Peggy Coleman. I'm 73 years old, and for the first time in over a decade, I'm finally living for myself.